I'm really pleased that we've reached the point where we can announce the people who are going to be on the review panel. The leader is going to be Professor Sue Proctor, who's a very experienced leader of independent investigations, and she was particularly associated recently with the Jimmy Savile inquiry in relation to the Leeds hospitals, and I'm really pleased that we've got her services. Alongside her is Raymond Galloway, who is an experienced former police officer at a senior level, and Samantha Cohen, who is a barrister, and she has particular experience of abuse cases and other cases of that kind. So I think we've got a really strong panel, and I'm really pleased that we've been able to acquire the services of these three people.
So there's been a considerable delay between announcing the review and actually starting the review. Why is that?
There has been a delay, and at one level I'm sorry about that. On the other hand, I think we've now got a better process than we would have done. Not least, we've been able to secure the services of this very high quality panel, and that's taken some time to do in terms of negotiating with them, their engagement and their diaries and so forth. There's also been a wider context we've had to take into account, which is to do with the setting up of the national inquiry, and that we wanted to be sure that we weren't going to cut across that in any way, and what we were going to do would fit with that. We believe that is now the case. We're now at the point where we can move forward with confidence.
Why have you not informed the former residents of the progress of the review so far?
We made a statement about the review when we decided we were going to do it, and that was a public statement. We've also been in touch with any who've been in touch with us, including those who've settled claims, and they've had letters from me where we've had an address that we could send one to. And if any of those people who've been in touch with us haven't received letters from me, then they need to be in touch again, and we'll make sure they're sent again. Those letters where people had settled a claim included an apology from me and information about the review and how they could be part of it.
Some former residents feel that they've been shut out of the review. What would your response to that be?
Well, anybody who is a former resident of Kendall House has the opportunity to be part of the review and to participate in it if they so wish. That's the main thing that we want to underline, and so that is available for any, and I hope that they will take advantage of that opportunity.
Why have you not invited any of the former residents of Kendall House to be members of the review panel?
The reason why no former resident of Kendall House is actually sitting on the review panel is for the same reason that I'm not sitting on the review panel. It needs to be independent of all concerned, and the important role that any former resident of Kendall House has is to participate in the life of the review, to share their story, to share their experience, so that the reviewers can take account of that in whatever it is they decide to say.
Why has the church not supported former residents through this process? Isn't this what you do?
We haven't necessarily been able to have direct contact with all the former residents. Kendall House closed a long time ago. Some people have moved on. We don't necessarily know where everybody actually is, but those with whom we have had contact should have had a communication from us. If any haven't, then I'd invite them to be in touch, and I'd certainly invite anybody who wished to participate in the review.
How much will the review cost?
Well, we haven't put a price tag on the cost of the review. The review needs to do what the review needs to do. We've made provision to fund it on the best estimates we have, but actually the important thing is that the review does its work and that the funding then is found to provide for that.
Why doesn't the diocese, instead of spending this amount of money on the review, simply pay compensation to the former residents for the birth defects to their children?
There is already, as we know, a method of compensation through the claims that people have submitted, and though most of those claims have now been settled, other claims could be forthcoming. So there's a mechanism for that. The purpose of the review is because we want to make sure that any lessons which ought to be learnt have been learnt, a bit like the national inquiry that's going on. So it's both and both are necessary. It is true that we no longer operate places like Kendall House, and therefore lessons from the review won't necessarily be directly applicable to somewhere like that. But the church still works, both in our diocese and more broadly, with vulnerable groups of people of different kinds, and there may be lessons which can be applied there. There's also the lessons about how the church dealt with this matter, and again, I think there may be learning there, and those are important things for us to take account of.
Have you been liaising with Kent Police over the review?
The police have have clearly been aware of Kendall House over the years. They themselves have not thought it right to investigate the matter, though they've had the opportunity to do so. Nonetheless, we are keeping them informed. They know that this review is happening, and that's where it sits at the moment.
Why have you specifically omitted the birth defects question from the review?
If somebody thinks that they have been affected by the medication that their parent, their mother, was given at Kendall House, then that is something that needs to be looked at in the context of possible claims. Hitherto, no child of a former resident has brought any claim in relation to defects, birth defects, or anything else. If anybody thinks that they have evidence of that they have suffered in that way, then my advice is that they should take proper legal advice and seek to bring a claim with the supporting evidence. That's the proper channel by which this should be looked into. If somebody were to bring a case that was successful in relation to a birth defect, then the compensation would be handled in the way that other claims have been handled. The process is there, it's there for people to make use of. But what I would say is that as yet, no one has brought a case in relation to any of these matters. If there is a case to be brought, then there are other channels to do it.
Why won't you make a personal apology to the former residents of Kendall House?
It's not the case that I won't personally apologise. A number of former residents have had letters which have included apologies from me, but we're also aware that for some residents actually just raising this whole thing again is not necessarily something they want because it's very painful. So we have to be sensitive about how we do this. However, as the review proceeds and in relation to the outcomes of the review, if there are further things which emerge which are such as require an apology, then apologies will be given.